What if I told you that at the lowest part of rock bottom, there's a trampoline? Welcome to the Rock Bottom Podcast. I'm your host, Mayssa. When I had the idea for the Rock Bottom Podcast, I did not want this to be about wallowing and crying about our rock bottoms. Of course, we want to know what our guests went through, but ultimately, I really want to focus on how people got themselves out of their rock bottom. So, as far as my own story goes, you will be hearing my full rock bottom story on a future episode. But for today, I wanted to talk about really quick, rapid fire 10 things that helped pull me out of my rock bottom. And this is also my first solo episode. I actually don't know exactly how we're going to structure the solo episodes going forward. So if you have any ideas, let us know. You can let us know on social media or in the comments on this episode. Let's jump right into it. The first thing I did when I was hitting the deepest, darkest point of my rock bottom is I isolated. And look, I know isolating can be an unhealthy coping mechanism, but the truth is the noise in my life had become so loud. I just needed to turn the volume down on everything. And that really meant saying no to basically everything social for a couple of months while I just really found a way to try to ground myself in anything that I could during a time where the inside of my mind and also my outer world just felt so tumultuous. So I remember during that time, I was just spending a lot of weekends, a lot of evenings alone at home. I was very sad, but honestly, I think being alone at home also let me process that sadness. I think I'd been running away from my sadness, from the dark sides of me, my shadow, and from any just negative emotions for not just years, for decades. Really, since I was a child, I just had no ability to sit with uncomfortable emotions. So just kind of being alone in my dark apartment, not going to social events, not going out, not going to party, not filling my days even with just work and projects and things to do all the time. I had to sit with my own sadness, and I cried a lot alone in my apartment during that time. And yes, in hindsight, it feels a little sad, but I think I really had to get that emotion out in order to be able to get to the other side of it. Second, and definitely a follow on to that, is I decided I was going to go celibate. I remember one specific day during this time, I just sent a text to any man who thought he was talking to me or that we had something going on. All those little loose ends that, frankly, sometimes we just keep them open because who doesn't love a, hey girl, what are you up to text from like a handsome guy, right? Even if you know it's not going anywhere. I just closed all those loose ends. I remember just getting a text from a guy who I knew I just didn't want anything to do with, but I was just still entertaining it for attention. And I just said, really honestly and really upfront, like, hey, I'm actually just not in a space right now where I'm dating. I just want to be really transparent about that. I just closed all the loose ends. And actually leading into my rock bottom, again, with the pattern of distraction and avoidance, I had been dating someone that summer leading into sort of the fall around the time that I really hit this lowest point of my rock bottom. And obviously I was going through so much in my own life and emotionally. This was not a healthy relationship. I was not showing up in a way that was healthy or constructive. And, obviously he was mirroring back to me just the chaos of my own inner world. So that relationship ended, and just coming out of it, I had such a deep sense that I was not open to entertaining any more dating situations. I just needed to close myself off to that completely in order to create this kind of blank canvas slate for me to really reconnect into myself. And I'm really glad that I did that. The third thing that I tapped into during this time is a program called To Be Magnetic. If you follow me, if you watch any of my content, you have heard me talk about To Be Magnetic a million times, and here is the 1,000,001 time. I am obsessed with the To Be Magnetic program. People say that To Be Magnetic is a cult. If TBM is a cult, I'm its first member. If TBM has no cult members, I'm dead. I think To Be Magnetic is such a useful program. I just don't think that there's anything in the To Be Magnetic program that anyone needs to be fearful of being harmful. To Be Magnetic is sort of packaged as a manifestation program, but what it really is, and I always call it a Trojan horse, is that it's an inner child healing program. I feel like they sell you on that if you do this work, you're going to manifest your dream life, which I really find to be true. And they kind of package it that way to get people to go and do like the deep, dark inner child healing work that people need to do. And I love that they approach it that way. I think it gets a lot of people, myself included, in through the door. And then you end up doing this deeper work and this deeper healing that you really need to do at some point if you're going to move forward. So To Be Magnetic is really an inner child healing program. It's rooted in these meditations called deep imaginings that they have created that kind of take you back through childhood memories, and they help you to process and what they call reprogram and reparent your inner child. And I just found so much healing in this program. I'm someone who had very little childhood memory. Going through these meditations unearthed a lot of childhood memory as early as like 1 and 2 years old. Guys, I'm someone who barely remembers high school. I went to a wedding for a college friend recently. I couldn't remember half the people there. Like, I have terrible, terrible memory. This program really helped me tap into my childhood, the emotions that I was feeling as a child, what that experience might have been like. And then it's not just about unearthing it, which sometimes I think certain therapies can just kind of bring stuff up to the surface and then you're just kind of left standing there, like not knowing what to do with it. They actually take you through this process of reparenting where you kind of reimagine and reprocess the experience as now the adult who can show up for your inner child and give them what they needed in that moment that they may not have gotten back when you were a child experiencing this traumatic or harmful or hurtful thing. So I find this Be Magnetic program to be such a great starting point. And again, when I was hitting this rock bottom, I was really isolating. I didn't have the energy to go out, socialize, do things with my friends. I was spending a lot of time alone at home. And I had heard about To Be Magnetic over the years. I actually was a listener of their podcast, but it always felt like this is going to be a lot of work. This is going to take a big commitment. But at that time, I just was like, I'm willing to try anything to get myself to feel better and to kind of turn my life around from this dead end that I'm finding myself at. And again, with so much more free time on my hands, I was like, let's dig into this program. And I just dove headfirst into the program that they recommend you start with. Is called How to Manifest. And I just went one by one through the programs from there over the next probably 6 months. And I feel like by going through those programs from where I started to where I was at the end of those 6 months was such a night and day change. And I just don't even know if I would have pulled myself out of that rock bottom if I wasn't going through these programs and doing this inner child work through To Be Magnetic. So highly recommend To Be Magnetic. Always shout them out. And it also makes it so easily digestible. The programs take you like one day at a time. They tell you exactly what you need to do. It's usually a couple of journal prompts and a meditation, or it might just be like a short video where they're explaining a certain concept. And then there's fun stuff like making your manifestation list and visualizing your dreams and the things that you actually want to manifest, or creating your authentic code, which is so fun, where you come up with the 4 words that really describe your core essence and what you authentically want to manifest, not just the things that you think you want to manifest because it's what society tells you. So anyways, yeah, if you guys are curious about this program, I really cannot recommend To Be Magnetic enough. And I love recruiting members into our little cult. The 4th thing that I think made a huge difference for me during my rock bottom is that I moved from New York City to Mexico City for 3 months in the winter. So I was really kind of hitting this rock bottom moment towards the end of the year. January was coming. My business was massively struggling, and I actually had to stop paying myself a salary out of my business. So I was about to have no income coming in starting in December, January time. So I decided I was going to pack up my apartment, sublet my apartment in New York, and then go down to Mexico City where I could manage my cost of living a lot better. And also winter was coming. And if I was in Mexico City, I knew I could be outside, I could be in the sun. And I just knew that that would also be good for my mental health. And this made such a difference. I don't know if it was specifically Mexico City. I am going to shout out Mexico City as a place where I'm always find myself manifesting things very quickly. I feel like when I'm in Mexico City, if I think something, it will like pop up in front of me the next day. People do say that there's like very magical, mystical energy in Mexico, and specifically on the land and the actual, I think it's a lake that Mexico City was built on. And I really believe in that stuff. And also I think it was just the change of environment. Like, again, I was spending a lot of like cold, dark winter nights alone in my apartment. I was crying a lot. I wasn't really seeing people. I think just packing a suitcase, getting on an airplane, getting to a new place was really, really helpful, just to start shifting my energy from this like really dark rock bottom energy that I was in to just feeling like I could feel a different energy or feel like something else was possible for me and my life by making this move. And that brings me to the fifth thing that just happened sort of organically out of making that move down to Mexico City, was a change of circle and changing the people that I was around and spending time with. I think that sometimes when we're going through a rock bottom, it's actually because we are changing so rapidly. That's kind of why sometimes we can crash out and bottom out, because our old life and the person that we were and the person that frankly got us here, it's not to shame that version of ourselves. It's not to shame any of the people from our past or hate on them. But that version of us and that version of our life is no longer working for us. And I think sometimes because we resist change so much and we're so comfortable in our old habits and in the version of ourselves that we were, some part of ourself, it's really our ego, resists the change so much. And that's why we sometimes have to crash all the way out into a rock bottom to finally get to the point where we are so fed up with how our life is going, the behaviors, the habits, the people, the toxic patterns that we're stuck in, to actually finally make the big change. And I think changing the people that you're spending time with and the energies that you're around can be a huge part of helping you shift out of the rock bottom. This isn't to say that you're going to need to cut everyone off forever, that you need to hate everyone, but I will say I did make a lot of changes to the people that I was spending time with, talking. I mean, that included cutting off even family members that we kind of had toxic and codependent dynamics together. And ultimately, again, moving down to Mexico City, I actually moved in and found a sublet with a mutual friend. I'd met her a few times through friends. She was a friend of a friend, but we weren't close friends. She is now one of my closest friends in the world. Shout out to Natalie. I love her so dearly. And it was, again, just moving into a new space, meeting new people, spending time with people who have different energies. I think that made a huge difference in me kind of, again, starting to see a different version of myself and a different version of my life that I could start taking baby steps towards, versus being stuck in my old habits and my old patterns that usually your friend circle and the people that you're closest to you guys are so ingrained in those old habits. For me, I was complaining, gossiping, being really negative. If anything, I feel like I'd kind of built up a lot of my friendships and relationships around, I now understand this, maybe people feeling sorry for me and a lot of victimhood. Like I would always be complaining that I was so broke and that my business wasn't working and that, my dating life was a mess. And I was very wrapped up in these stories about my life. So what did that do? It attracted people around me who either also lives were a shit show, so we could all commiserate together, or they were kind of like savior types who I think almost like pitied me or wanted to support me. And that's a very beautiful thing, obviously, in one sense, but that dynamic of a savior and victim friendship or relationship, it can be codependent and it can actually keep me stuck in my victimhood if someone's always there to save me and to feel bad for me and to pity me. So I think it was a sort of cleansing that almost happened by force, by the fact that I left New York City and went to a new place. I was able to just spend time around new energies, new people. And I think that made a huge difference in, again, me starting to shift into a new energy for myself and for my life. Okay, the next thing I want to touch on, number 6, is mushrooms and plant medicine. And I actually took mushrooms for the first time a couple years before my rock bottom. But I really think that opening that portal through plant medicine, through taking mushrooms and kind of opening that side of my brain and that spiritual side of myself through the plant medicine is actually something that kind of started to tap me into this new energy that I was trying to shift into. That, like I said before, sometimes you're actually rock bottoming out because you are expanding into a new version of yourself. You are accessing new portals and new dimensions and new manifestations. And sometimes the part of you that is resisting that is what's going to crash you out to your rock bottom. And so I actually think the start of my plant medicine journey, which was again a few years before my rock bottom, was sort of part of maybe what led me there, but then also what helped get me out. And it was part of what led me there kind of in a good way, because it was what was starting to expand me and expand my mind. And when you take mushrooms for the first time, you touch a feeling of love and of abundance and of God, frankly, that once you've touched it, I think it can be, you just can't unsee it. It's like now I've felt what it feels like to touch a sense of God and oneness and the universe and love. And then you go back to your life, and your life is still the version of you that has been conditioned over decades and decades and years of conditioning that is not pure love and is not pure abundance and is not tapped in on a day-to-day basis to the universe and the godliness and the divinity of it all. So I think that can create, again, this sort of gap and disconnect between where you're going and where you are currently. And I think actually plant medicine can kind of speed up that process, which can result in a crash to a rock bottom. But the plant medicine is actually what's getting you to the other side, to this more expanded version of yourself. So I say all this to say, I think plant medicine may have kind of caused the initial descent into rock bottom, but then it was also a very helpful tool in getting me out of it. And I started taking higher and higher doses of mushrooms. Please do not do anything without guidance, without speaking to somebody who is licensed in these things or understands these things deeply. I'm just speaking to my own personal experience here. But as I was sort of descending into that rock bottom during that time in Mexico City, I did actually on accident a larger dose of mushrooms than I had ever done before. And it was the first time I sort of came home from being out with friends, came back to the apartment, and they hit me on a delay. And then I was alone in my apartment with the medicine, which I'd never been on mushrooms by myself before. But this was such a beautiful trip and experience for me, because I was able to, again, like I said about isolation and being kind of alone at the house, this was the first time where through mushrooms, I feel like I really went deep. Like I shed so much. I cried so much. I think when you're around other people, of course, you can still access your emotions, but it's on such another level when you're really by yourself and just in your own energy. And I had conversations with ancestors and people in my family that I was moving through some kind of trauma and trying to process parts of our relationship. I really processed a lot of that through that medicine journey. And then what has happened to me actually multiple times when I've had a big plant medicine journey that has really resulted in a lot of epiphany and shifts is I got food poisoning the week after. And now I'm actually understanding this as a very interesting way that our soul's journey and our kind of physical body is catching up, is that if you are going to have an emotional and a spiritual purge, you may have to have a physical purge right after. I just share this to say that almost every time somebody tells me that they have food poisoning, I can and I ask them like 2 or 3 questions, I can almost always immediately connect it to some kind of spiritual purge and process and shift that they are going through. So I think taking that plant medicine kind of as I was finding my way out of this rock bottom was a really big shift. My body sort of then had to purge to shift and catch up to it. And I think it just affirms the fact that, yeah, that plant medicine journey was really pivotal in me starting to shift my mindset and kind of start pulling myself out of that rock bottom. And I have taken plant medicine again in sort of larger and larger doses since then. And I've had so many incredible experiences that have really, really helped me. So again, just really sharing my personal experience here. But I think if it's something that you're curious about, I do believe that the medicine and plants will call you. So if you feel really called to it, and you'll kind of know, and if you can trust your intuition about it, you'll know what to take, when to take, what's the right setting, but really listen to yourself and listen to your intuition about that stuff. I've been curious about ayahuasca, for example, for many years. I have not felt called to ayahuasca, and I'm just going to trust that. And I'm just going to let it be. And if ayahuasca is not for me in this lifetime, I will accept that. And if I get a very, very strong call and it all falls together in a very organic way, then maybe I will end up on that journey. But that's just to say, to be really in tune with yourself when it comes to these things, and just letting them kind of call you versus like going out and chasing them is always my advice to people. The next thing that I think was really pivotal in pulling me out of my rock bottom, number 7, was I started asking the universe for signs. So during this time that I was kind of holed up in my apartment, winter was coming. I was also working from home. Again, I wasn't really socializing. I would sit on my couch during those winter days working. I couldn't even like get myself to my dining room table. I just would like sink into the couch, try to get through my workday. And I remember noticing this bird on my fire escape out the window that's right next to my couch. And I saw him once. And then I remember a few days later seeing him again and just being like, okay, whatever. It was a different bird for New York City. It wasn't a pigeon. There's a name for this type of bird, but he has like a blue, shiny underbelly. It's a black bird. And I noticed him again, like once or twice. I didn't think anything of it besides the fact of, oh, a bird that's not a pigeon. And then this was around the time that I had this ping to just ask the universe for guidance. I remember literally just sitting there and saying, universe, like if everything is going to be okay, just send me a sign. And it's so funny when we ask the universe for signs, because sometimes the universe is literally trying to hammer a sign on our head, because then I started seeing the bird. Like he would come every day, every day. And I just, now in hindsight, I know it was the same bird. But at the time I just was like, oh, I guess there's this like new type of bird in my neighborhood. And I wasn't thinking anything of it. And then I remember one day I was so down in the dumps and I was sitting on the couch. I was crying in the middle of the workday. I think I had just gotten off some kind of work call that had upset me. I'm crying and I'm crying and I'm crying. And I look over and it's this same bird. And then it just clocks to me like, this same bird has been here every day, I think at that point for 2 weeks. And I was like, I've been asking the universe for a sign, and this same like random ass bird that is not a pigeon has been coming to my fire escape every day. Oh my God, I get goosebumps just talking about it. Like, what kind of sign are you looking for? A bird that has come every day. And that's when I clocked that like, this is definitely the same bird. And that little guy came to my fire escape every single day through that harsh winter months that I was stuck in New York City. And then even after I got back from Mexico City for almost a year, I saw that bird almost every single day. If I was sitting on the couch in the afternoon, I would see him on the fire escape. And it's so interesting because I feel like as I shifted out of the rock bottom over the course of the coming year, when I was kind of in a place where I was like feeling so much better, I stopped seeing the bird. And I just feel like he was there during that time when I really, really needed that. And then when I no longer needed it, like he went on and hopefully he's comforting someone else on their fire escape now. But I started asking the universe for signs. And here's the thing that I have now understood about asking for signs. Yes, I do believe in a higher power. Now, through this experience, I did not used to. We can get into that more in another episode, but I have a whole thing on higher power and spiritual belief and all of that that came through during this time of going through my rock bottom. But when it comes to asking for signs, regardless of whether or not you believe that the universe, God, goddess, source is sending you signs, is listening to you, is listening to your prayers or not. The thing about asking for a sign is that it is an incredible nervous system regulation tool. Usually when you're going through your rock bottom, when you're going through these major transformation moments and they feel chaotic, a big part of the issue is that your nervous system is so dysregulated that you are struggling just to get from one day to the next. And each subsequent day that things feel like they're getting worse and worse, your nervous system is getting more and more dysregulated. You get stuck into a fight or flight state and you can't really create anything or do anything that can get you out of your rock bottom. It's really hard to kind of generate life force and energy when your nervous system is that dysregulated, right? It's the endless cycle of like, I feel like shit, so I distract and I, eat really bad food and I can't get myself to work out, but then I feel even worse. So now I really can't get myself to work out. And now I really need a tub of ice cream. And now I really, you know, can't see my friends and need to isolate, and you're like digging yourself deeper and deeper into the hole, the more dysregulated you become. So what asking for a sign can do is just give you one moment of nervous system regulation. When I would see that bird every single day, somewhere in the afternoon time, it was like a exhale, like, oh my God, the universe is here. The universe is telling me everything's going to be okay. All right, here we go. Shift out of fight or flight. That's what these tools, that's actually what a lot of these spiritual beliefs are giving you, is a way to regulate your nervous system, even if it's just for 5 minutes in a time where you're feeling dysregulated the whole day. And then that little 5 minutes of regulation, you can build on it. That can turn into 10 minutes. That can turn into 30 minutes. That can turn into enough regulation to get you to a yoga class, or to get you maybe not to go to all the way out to a party or to a big social event, but just to go see one friend who can actually make you feel better. Can you start to build little tiny nervous system regulation moments and let them compound on themselves? I was always an anti-vitamin girl. Please don't come for me, but this is just how I felt. It never felt right taking pills, powders, or the most confusing, sugar-filled gummies to get the nutrients that we should be getting from our food. But as I got older and with every doctor's visit and blood work panel, it was becoming clear. I needed supplements. I was iron, vitamin D, and vitamin B deficient, and I could feel it. Sluggishness, oversleeping, and low mood. So I begrudgingly added these pills to my diet, but my blood work kept coming back the same. Then I met Sarah, the founder of GEM. She created a real food supplement which contains 20 vitamins and nutrients and is designed for maximum nutrient absorption. Sarah explained to me that poor absorption from capsules is probably why my blood work wasn't improving almost a year into taking my vitamins. I started taking GEM a few months ago and the results are undeniable. I've been taking their daily bite and I had my first blood work that didn't show vitamin B and D deficiency in over 2 years. Plus, the bites are actually delicious. Sarah kindly shared a code with us so you can get 15% off of your order using the code ROCKBOTTOM or by visiting dailygem.com/rockbottom. Thank you, Sarah, for creating this product and finally getting me to take my vitamins. So on the theme of nervous system regulation, the 8th tool that was so pivotal in pulling me out of my rock bottom was discovering breathwork. I went to my first breathwork class on a day when I literally called my therapist that morning and said, I'm closing down my business. We had gotten bad news from a retailer that we were working with. And I just was like, I have had enough. I can't go one more day running this company. Nothing ever goes my way. Everything is always collapsing in on me. I feel like I can't breathe. And I was just so fed up. This was already like a year after kind of like the peak of my rock bottom. And I just felt like I can't catch a fucking break. And so I'm just going to pull the plug on everything and just like move to a beach in Latin America and never speak to anyone again and start a new life and change my name. And so I was feeling just really shitty that day and my outlook was bleak. And I remember just trying to find something. It was a Friday. I was trying to find something I could do that evening just to feel a little better, even just try to find like a massage or, I was looking at some of these wellness spaces around New York if there was something I could book just to get like a little bit of an exhale. And the place I was trying to see if they had a massage didn't have any massages available, but they had this breathwork class. So I signed up for the breathwork class, just thinking like, I just need to do something, get out of my apartment on this Friday night and just try to do anything to feel better. Again, this is the beauty of the rock bottom. You're willing to try anything. I'd been hearing about breathwork over the years, and it was kind of something that like felt a little out there for me. Like, what do you do there? You just breathe really strong. Like, am I going to feel weird about it? Do I even want to confront these demons? Like, maybe I just never felt like it was for me. I'd rather get a massage. But I was kind of in that moment where I was like, I've had massage and it has not changed my life. Maybe we need to try something different. So I go to this breathwork class. Again, it's Friday evening. I cry through the entire class. Basically, from the moment that we start the breathing through the end of the class, I cry and I have a huge emotional release. And I wake up from that breath work and I'm like, we're good. We got this. Behave is an incredible business. We got to keep going. I'm good. The business is good. Everything is going to be okay. I feel like the emotional release that you can tap into through your breath, the access to the stored emotion, right? They say the body keeps the score. There is so much trapped energy and emotion that we struggle to get out from our bodies, from our physical bodies, because of the lifestyles that we live in this modern day, right? We're on our phones much of the day. We have distraction. We have voices in our ear all the time. We don't move our bodies as much as we should. We're very sedentary. All of this leads to just trapping that energy even more. Plus, adding on to the fact that we are a society of a lot of emotional suppression, just as a culture. And so, just laying down for an hour, tapping into your breath, you will access something that is stuck. And I started going to breath work after this class. The teacher who's amazing, AJ, who I now work with, and we actually host breath work events together. I started going to his class every single week, never missed a week for, over a year. I cried through every single session for the first 3 months. And then kind of got to the other side of that where I'll still cry in a session if there's something recent that I need to process. But I think those first 3 months, I was processing grief and emotion from the first 30 years of my life. That's why there was so much tears and sadness. There was a lot of anger in those initial 3 months as well. But it kind of let me move through it. And then now I feel like I just need to process whatever hasn't been processed since the last session. Or obviously things still get stuck. Maybe something comes up from, a year back or, and I still process things from childhood in these sessions. But my point is, like, there was so much trapped, and just committing myself to breath work, I was able to move through so much. And then now I feel like it's just a regular practice. Now it's more maintenance, whereas the initial kind of couple months of breath work was a lot of just, clearing the backlog, frankly. And again, it's a nervous system regulation tool. It's something that allows you to tap into also a spiritual practice. I think that there's a lot of spiritual messages and experiencing that we can have through breath work. So something that I highly recommend. And breath work is the most easily accessible tool that we have. It's our breath. Like, we could do it right now. You can pause. Actually, we should do that. Even I feel a little like 4 deep breaths. There's the box breath, which is really easy to do. You count 4 counts in, then you hold your breath at the top for 4 counts, and then you count 4 to exhale. And as you count and as you connect to the breath, it just is such an instant calm. Like, I want actually everyone to do this, just so, not to say I told you so, but I'm going to say I told you so. Like, let's take those 4 deep breaths. I'm going to do it with you. So inhale, count for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4 at the top. And exhale for 4. Hold at the bottom for 4. Inhale, deep breath in for 4. Hold at the top for 4. And deep exhale. When your lungs are empty, you can hold again at the bottom. Deep inhale in for 4. Hold at the top for 4. And deep exhale out for 4. Okay, I don't know if that was 3 breaths or 4 breaths, but I feel calmer already. I was also getting a little wrapped up in my first solo episode. I'm a little nervous, and the reset. So your breath is always accessible to you when I used to get panic attacks. I used to start hyperventilating when I was in that rock bottom moment and I felt like I was really drowning. If you can access your breath, that is going to actually take you so far. I would even argue, like, even the plant medicine, even some of these big things like this inner child healing and, the journeys and the retreats and all this stuff, just if you can get 4 deep breaths in a couple times a day, that is going to, again, help you find those pockets of nervous system regulation that you can then start to build on when you are experiencing sort of a fight or flight state in your nervous system for days and days that can turn into weeks and months on end. To start to get out of it, you need to just build little stepping stones of regulation, even if it's 4 deep breaths, that you can start to then regulate for 4 deep breaths. Have a moment of regulation, even if it's just the next 5 minutes. Okay, now I have a tool to get me 5 minutes of nervous system regulation. you can build from that to 15 minutes to an hour until eventually you can feel regulated days and days on end. And then the dysregulation becomes the exception, not the rule. All right, the ninth thing that helped me out of my rock bottom was prioritizing my mental health over everything else. I am a business owner. I'm a founder of a company. We were at the time a really small company, really small team. Basically everything relied on me and my co-founder. And if I didn't do something, it didn't get done. And so I felt like I had to wake up in the morning and get after it, right? It was a lot of hustle culture. It was a lot of stories about if I'm not working right now, if we're not growing, if it's not growth at all costs, like the business is going to fail, da 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 da. The business was failing actually anyways because I was behaving that way. The business was failing anyways because I was so dysregulated. The business was failing because I was so out of connection with myself and I was descending into this rock bottom. Me and rock bottom cannot run a business or build a successful business. And this was actually a message that I got from my spiritual teacher that was so pivotal and so helpful. She basically, because I would tell her, okay, you want me to what? Pray in the morning, meditate every morning, then go for a walk, then move my body, then eat a clean breakfast, then, breathe deeply for 10 minutes, then read my spiritual reading. And like, girl, this is 2 to 3 hours of work in the morning. I'm not even going to be starting my work day until 11 o'clock. And she was like, I don't care if you start your workday at 2 p.m. If you get from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. regulated and from a place that is actually in alignment with what you're trying to do in your business, that is going to take you so much farther than starting your day at 9 a.m., but you're dysregulated and you're actually wreaking chaos and havoc all throughout the day. And she was right. I was manifesting a lot of negative outcomes in my own business because I was functioning from a place of such dysregulation, which means fear, scarcity, anxiety, panic. And everyone that I worked with, every meeting I showed up to, every opportunity I showed up to was experiencing me as panic and chaos. And then I was creating panic and chaos in my business. So this is why I feel like I was stuck in a cycle of what really just felt like a cycle of failure and just not being able to get my business anywhere. We just couldn't really move forward and grow. And so I just decided that my mental health and my soul eats first. That's how my day is structured. Until my soul has gotten what it needs to feel good, we don't move into the workday. And I just started saying, even if I had to start my workday at noon that day, I did everything that I was requiring of myself to kind of feed my soul. Sometimes that was, to be magnetic workshops in the morning, definitely some form of meditation. I got into Joe Dispenza meditations at one point. I really loved those, but I think the best ones are 20 to 30 minutes. I really try to do a spiritual reading every morning and then, some kind of prayer and some kind of movement. But again, the more regulated you become, you need less tools to get regulated in the morning. And also you can move through these tools faster and reach a space of regulation much faster. So, I would say in the beginning, sometimes these were taking me 2 to 3 hours, but now I'm in a place where I can usually get through the morning in, 40 minutes to an hour, plus maybe my workout on top of that. And then I can really be starting my work day at like a normal time. But it wasn't until I actually started also considering this work part of my work. Like when you're a founder and a business owner, the energy that you're in is the energy that your business is going to be in. That day, that week, that month, that quarter, your energy is exactly what you're going to manifest and create in your business. So I had to really shift my mindset, shift out of that hustle culture and all the messages and programming that we get, this very toxic masculine kind of energy that also frankly doesn't really work for women, even if it might work for men. And I would argue it doesn't really work for them either on a spiritual level. It might be working for them in the physical realm and creating money and wealth and quote unquote success. But I don't think it's really working for anyone spiritually. But I think especially for women, we have to operate from a place of flow, from a place of intuition. And we can't even access our own intuition and our own flow unless we've regulated ourselves first. Okay, the last one, number 10. It's a really quick and easy one, but it's also the hardest one. And it's also the one I feel like people hate to hear is that I cut out alcohol. The truth is, I saw a video on TikTok and it basically said, if you feel like your life doesn't look the way that you want it to look, you're not manifesting the things you want, your business isn't going how you want it to go, your dating life doesn't look how you want it to look, your relationships, your family life, things are out of whack, but you still drink every week or every weekend, you have nothing to complain about because you are creating your own misery. And it was just one of those things where it was like right message, right place, right time. I just heard her and I literally just looked in the mirror and was like, she's right. Like there are so many things about my life that are not going the way that I want them to, particularly when it came to my business. But I would then go out on the weekends to distract myself and, go to parties or drink, or even just having like one or two drinks at dinner and then feeling the next day like I was operating at half pace or I couldn't quite get myself moving and I had brain fog and I wasn't totally there mentally the way that I would want to be and fully show up for myself and my life and my business. So I decided last year I was going to take the whole year off of drinking. That was 2024. We're now in November of 2025 and I just have continued not drinking. I didn't have a rule about it. My rule was last year, not one drop of alcohol the whole year. And I remember January 1st rolled around this year and I was going to a New Year's party and I was like, yeah, maybe at midnight I'll have like a sip of champagne, like whatever. I wasn't being so strict about it, but then midnight rolled around and I was like, why would I? Even a half a glass of champagne I know is going to throw me off tomorrow. And I actually had a meditation workshop I wanted to go to the next day. And so didn't. And then here we are almost a full year later. And again, still haven't drank. And this is not to shame drinking. This is not to shame anyone for drinking. This is just to share in my experience, cutting out alcohol, I think made a huge difference. It's just, all the usual things. It's a depressant. It's shifting your energy to a place that probably is taking you deeper and deeper down, not uplifting you. And all these things that are going to uplift you, they really do require a lot of energy. Like meditation requires, especially in the beginning, requires a certain amount of life force. Doing these new habits, these new practices, whether it's breath work or yoga, on the surface and on paper, they sound like they're relaxing habits and practices, but actually to get the ball rolling with them, it requires a lot of like life force and energy. So I think having something like alcohol in your life that is throwing your energy off on a day in and a week in and out basis is going to make it harder to pick up these habits and to really turn them into habits. So for that reason, I kind of took a break from drinking and I think it's made a huge difference. So many incredible things showed up in my business last year. So many incredible things have shown up in my life ever since then. And I don't think I can discredit the fact that I cut out alcohol. I think if I hadn't cut out alcohol, things might have played out very differently and probably not in the way that I would have hoped and wanted them to. So I'm very grateful that I kind of made that commitment to myself and that I stuck with it. And who knows? I used to love a cocktail. I used to love like a night out and, all the fun that came with it. But I've been having just as much fun without alcohol. And I also really learned that if something's not fun without alcohol, it's probably not fun to begin with. Anything can be fun with drugs and alcohol at the end of the day. And I feel like that's also aligned me with just doing things that are actually fun for me. So I've been, really grateful for that as well. So, all right, there you have it. My first solo episode. Again, I had to take those few deep breaths mid-episode because I got kind of nervous. But, I really am such a long-winded yapper. Like, no one should have let me buy this podcast mic. You know how they said, like, tax the podcast mics for men? Like, they kind of need to tax it for me too, because I just love to yap. I feel like this was supposed to be 20 minutes. We're running up on 50 minutes here on the recording. So, but yeah, I'm excited to just chat with you guys more directly and just share the things that I've learned on my journey out of my rock bottom and just through this whole process. Because again, the whole purpose of this podcast is to really show that there is so much strength and resilience and transformation that happens through the process of going through a rock bottom. And I want people to see that, whether they're maybe coming into a rock bottom, in the deep, dark pits of a rock bottom, or starting to come out the other side. I really want to share just how much transformation is contained in a rock bottom. There's a lot of energy in rock bottom. That's why it feels so intense. But that amount of energy is also what is going to transform you and create this new life and this new person that you're going to be on the other side, right? It's like the cocoon stage of the butterfly. It's like a big bang, right? It's like all this energy so that something new can be created out the other side. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. And you can tune in 2 weeks for our next episode, which is an interview with Flynn Skidmore, which I am so excited about. He's our first male guest on the podcast. And we got all the way into it on all the things. And I just think you guys are going to love it. So we'll see you then. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Rock Bottom. If you enjoyed this conversation, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe, follow, and leave us a review. And if there's someone you love who could benefit from this conversation, we'd so appreciate you sharing this episode with them. You can find the Rock Bottom Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow us at rockbottom.pod on Instagram and TikTok. We'll see you next time.
Rock Bottom was created by Mayssa Chehata and is produced by me, Desta Wunderrad. With production support and audio engineering by Johnny Simon, this episode was produced and recorded in New York City by Wonder Studios. Thank you for listening.